Hi, in this video I'm going to show how easy it is to get started with the Paubox email API. So what I have here is a healthcare shop, and I have my customers be able to shop for items, in this case a CPAP machine, and then they need to receive an OTP via email in order to confirm the order. So I'm going to go ahead and click Get OTP to confirm order, and that redirects them to a page where they are to enter the OTP that's sent to them via email. So if we look at the code for this application, here's where I'm generating the OTP, and then I call a function send email with that OTP. And for now, all I'm doing is I'm putting a to-do note that says I need to send a HIPAA compliant email with the OTP and then the OTP's value. Great, so now we're going to use the Paubox email API to actually send an email. Once you sign up for the Paubox email API, you should see a screen that looks something like this. So if you go ahead and click Settings, this is where it lists your domains. Now, I've actually already added this domain. For a guide in adding the domain, you can click on this Quick Start Guide, as well as check the description of this video. Once you've added your domain, you need to generate an API key for it. So if you click on this menu on the right and scroll down, you should see something that says View API Settings. If you click on that, you should see a button that says Add API Key. We need to give the API key a unique name. It doesn't really matter what it is, it just needs to be unique. In my case, I'll call mine Development API Key. And the key that's shown is only displayed once upon creation. So make sure that you copy that and put it somewhere safe. Now that we have the API key, we need to make it available to our application. Obviously, how you do this will depend on the language and framework you're using. In my case, I'm using Ruby on Rails, so I'm going to go Rails Credentials Edit. And where I have my API key, that's where I'm going to enter it. So I'll just go ahead and paste it there and save that out. Then I should have that key available to use in my code. Great. So now we need to see how to actually use the Paubox email API. And it's very simple actually. So I'm here at docs.paubox.com. And if you click here, Paubox email API, there's a quick start guide. It goes through most of what I've already covered. What we need to see now is actually how to send a message. So I'm going to click on messages, and you'll see here there's a simple endpoint called send message. So what I need to do is I need to do an HTTP post to https api.paubox.net/v1 and then my API username. So how you can actually see this is if we go back to our Paubox email API settings, you'll see that I actually have an API URL here provided. So that's the API URL I'd use. In my case, my API username is just Haiku Code. So that email API URL will simply form that part, and then I have just /messages. And then you'll see that we provide obviously an application JSON content type header and authorization header. Then the authorization header has the following form. It's token, capital T, space, token with a small t, equals, and then the API key that we generated. And then in terms of the body of the request, we just send through something that looks like this. We just have data, message, our recipients, so obviously who's going to receive the email. We give some headers, the subject line of the email, the from address, and then you can add any custom headers you might need. And then finally the email content. And it's a good idea to provide a plain content as well as HTML. Most email clients can display HTML, but in case they can't, it falls back to plain text. So it's always a good idea to include both of these in an email. So all that's remaining for us to do is actually make this request in our code. So I'll put my browser on that side and my IDE on this side, and let's go ahead and code that up. So the first thing I'll do is actually define the body that I'm going to send through. So I'll have body equals, and then I'll have a hash, and as you can see I need a data key, data, which is also a hash, message, which is also a hash, recipients, which is an array, and that will just be the recipients of my email. For now, I'll just hard code it to my own email. Right, then we need, after the recipients, we need headers. And we need a subject. Subject, I'll just say your healthcare shop OTP. Then we need the from address. So I'll put it from a no reply at my domain. And then finally the email content. And just for this example, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to have my content just be something like your healthcare shop OTP is, and then the OTP's value. Very similar thing for the HTML. I'll just open HTML tag, open a body tag, and I'll just do a paragraph tag, end paragraph, end body, and end HTML. Alright, so I've defined the body of the request. So now let's go ahead and actually make the request. In my case, I'm using a gem called HTTP party. Obviously, it will depend whatever framework, whatever language you're using. If you're using something like Python, there's requests, and I'm sure there's equivalents in all other languages. In my case, I'm just going to do a post, an HTTP post to, and then if we look here, it was our email API, which again, as a reminder, is displayed here on our settings tab. So it's that, and then slash my domain, and then slash messages. Right, and then let's say I want to pass in the body is my body to JSON, and I'm going to pass in some headers. Right, so the two headers I needed to pass were content type application JSON. So content type would be application JSON. And then I need to pass in the authorization header. So authorization. And that has that particular form. So it's token with a capital T, space, token with a small t, equals, and then whatever my API key is. So however you pull in environment variables or secrets in your framework, you would do that here. In my case, I would go rails.application.token credentials Paubox API key. So in theory, that should be working and I should be sending emails. But just to test, I'm going to save this as a variable called response. And what I'm going to do here is just simply puts the response.code, puts whether the response was okay, and let's also just go ahead and put the actual response. So if I head back to my healthcare shop, I click Get OTP to confirm order. We should now see in the server logs that I get the response code was 200, the response was okay, and this is actually the response that I get back from Paubox. So you see I've got a source tracking ID, custom headers, which is empty in my case, and just a note to say everything's okay. And if I go and look in my email client, you'll see that I actually got that email. Your healthcare shop OTP. You'll see it's from my no reply address to the correct recipient, and it's got the correct content. One final thing to note would be this source tracking ID. So as you can see here, the one I got back was B5DEE. If I look back in my Paubox email API web interface and I click on mail log, you should see a log of all emails sent, as well as that tracking ID here under message ID. So I can use this to confirm that I'm getting the correct emails. I could use it for tracking on my own application, etc. So that was just a very quick overview of how to get started with the Paubox email API. As you can see, it's fairly simple and quick to get started. Thanks so much for watching.